Good afternoon or good evening to everyone, wherever you are in the world. I'm based in Dublin myself at the moment. So nice to virtually see you all. My name is Sabina Bonnici and I'm the account director for vStream Health. And the session that we've got on now is called Navigating Hybrid Events. So I'll be taking you through some of the examples, opportunities and challenges around hybrid events. So vStream Health, we create content and digital experiences for engaging audiences, and we have a dedicated virtual events team. We've been running events for one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world now for the last couple of years. Obviously started off doing virtual events and progressively have done lots more hybrid as time went on. So it's that experience that I'll be talking to you about, showing a few case studies and the like. So let's crack on. Okay, so hopefully the slides are moving on for you as you're seeing them there. So the format for this session, essentially we've got about 20 minutes. I could talk to you for hours about hybrid events, but I'm just going to focus on three key areas, or areas that I think are key around hybrid events. Creation of them, the cost of them, and content for them as well. So as I mentioned, we're going to look at a couple of examples, a couple of challenges around it, particularly with cost, and some opportunities around content as well. And what I'd like you to keep in mind is if you have examples or you have challenges that you're experiencing at the moment, there's a QA box on your screen. Please feel free to enter the questions anytime. And then what we'll do at the end, we've got about 10 minutes for questions and conversation at the end. So we can have a chat then. But hopefully what I'll present to you now is we'll give you a couple of thought starters or ideas really around hybrid events. Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but hybrid in the late 90s meant for me a human alien clone. I'm thinking of the Alien Resurrection film. And then later on, it becomes hybrid is the term that we use for, vehicles, driving around with petrol and electricity. And now here we are, 2022, talking about hybrid events. Who knew? But really, what we want to kind of figure out a little bit is how we got here with hybrid events, because that is important and that does come across in some of the challenges that we're facing. So, and I'll do it through the lens of the client that we're most familiar with, which is our big pharmaceutical client. So really, they were running huge events in terms of reaching their audience, which is healthcare practitioners. They would be running huge events, congresses, in-person, face-to-face networking and education initiatives in order to reach them and educate the HCPs about their products. And that, of course, all went by the wayside with the pandemic taking over. So they pivoted to virtual and we helped them with that. We took them on that journey and started running virtual events for them. But we're at the point, probably since the end of, in Ireland and the UK anyway, probably since the end of December, where the clients are now saying, hang on, we're ready to go back face to face. Do we really need virtual anymore? What's the value in it? So we're going to talk about that challenge later, especially when it gets to cost. But that's essentially kind of the context to what we're presenting here today. So the first topic is around making hybrid events. So we have the obligatory puzzle, the puzzle stock photo, but it's stock. But I have to say, in terms of strategy and objectives, that's the baseline. That's the absolute baseline of where you should be starting with any event, with any business objective. Your event plan and your objectives must align, and they must stem from your business plan. So the key points here are that to look at your marketing and the reach, how you're going to get to your audience, look at your content strategy, what are the KPIs that you'll be setting for that audience, and then the return on investment. And again, we'll come back to around how we could look at that in a slightly different way for hybrid events than maybe we've looked at before for previous events. So I thought this was quite an interesting way of phrasing an approach to hybrid, parallel but blended, because what's new about events now that they're hybrid is that we can now create opportunities for attendees to take part in shared experiences. So the in-person attendee can have a shared experience with an online person, and that's something that we haven't really got there before with yet. So this is a whole new world for some of our clients and for some of our event owners, and we're helping them through that. And we've got a couple of ideas around that, some of which I'll share with you today. So certainly it is possible now to have interaction between the virtual attendees and the in-person attendees. Both their journeys, it's important to recognize, begin at event registration. So generally everybody will be registering online, but it's from that point that their journeys diverge. So from a planning point of view for a hybrid event, it's really to map out those journeys across each of their touch points and see what kind of activities, what kind of content works for both audiences. And some might cross over and some might be completely different at certain times. Some things that could be joined could be gamification, depending on your audiences. Certainly QA and polls are really good to do as a joint exercise across the two audiences. Virtual meetings, you can actually set up meetings with your in-person attendees with your online attendees and vice versa. Some event platforms have an event app, which can be useful as well for networking. And then there's the interaction on screens at the venue itself. So you can create loads of different areas where there's crossover. What I'm going to take you through next is a couple of examples that specifically we've come across. And really, I'm not going to go into too much depth, but pick out kind of highlights really that could be interesting for discussion or for food for thought, really. So we ran for Novartis, we ran a breast cancer masterclass, and this was a hybrid event. It took place in 3 cities in England: London, Manchester, and Birmingham. We streamed the event. We streamed the speakers from London, and we had audiences in London, Manchester, and Birmingham, as well as the online. So essentially, you're talking about 4 different locations for audiences, 1 location for the speakers in this case. So what I wanted to call out here was really that we found having the professional lighting and stage setup, having the live stream of speakers from the stage, added a huge amount of value to this particular event. Audience retention was huge. In actual fact, the was below expectations in the end, and the online attendance was up to, I think was about 80%. So the average audience member stayed around for 80% of the session, which was 2 hours long. So that's really good in terms of other events we've run and times we've looked at. That works out really high in terms of retaining the audience's attention there. And there were lots of comments on the value of having that live setting stage and people feeling like it was real, people feeling online like they were there. And of course, there was the value of the fact that not a huge amount of people did turn up in those cities in the end. So having that virtual stage really added a lot to this particular event. The second example I wanted to share with you related to this was an experimentation we did with breakout rooms. So we had live and online breakout rooms for speakers. And what we were trying to recreate here was this idea of the speaker's corner. So we wanted to give people the opportunity to ask their questions to the speaker. So we had 4 rooms set up in the actual venue with AV, and speakers moved from room to room, and obviously the online audience stayed still. So what they could do then is ask the questions to each of the speakers. So again, what we're trying to do is, you all know the scrum that happens at the end of an event when everyone tries to get down to the front of the stage and get their question into the speaker. Well, we want the value of a hybrid is that you can actually essentially democratize that and make it available for everybody to get their chance to have a chat with the speaker. So this idea of speakers corners with breakouts is a really valuable thing to, again, bring the online person into that live world, but also it still allows the usual breakout rooms that you would be doing with a real in-person audience as well. So other interactive features, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, but they all have quite a lot of value when you're doing a hybrid event: polls with live results, surveys, moderated chat features for the online aspect, group chat between the audience and presenter one-to-one, or private chat if that's available. Post-webinar, the Q&A, which we will obviously be doing later on. So there are a few examples of some of the audience interaction techniques that we find work really well across the audience. So what I wanted to call here was a couple of other things that work, we would suggest work for hybrid. Mixing on-site and online speakers, have perhaps shorter presentations than you might normally. Consider breaks when they happen and what happens for each audience at that time. So you could provide virtual activities for the online audience while the in-person audiences are moving around. And maybe consider having an event that's maybe slightly shorter than a pure on-site event. And that's, again, to cater for the two different audiences there. So the last example that I'll talk about was another masterclass event that we did. But the reason why I'm calling this out was that it actually took place over 4 weeks. So rather than your Congress, which is 2 days like this one, or an event which is a couple of hours, what we did here was at the beginning of the month, 8 pre-recorded presentations were released to the attendees on the platform. And by the way, I should have actually said at the start, our platform partners are CNX and webinar.net. So you can kind of see one of our virtual environments that we've created there using CNX as the platform. So we created these pre-recorded presentations, released them to attendees at a particular date to watch at their leisure. And then 1 week later, these were streamed live. So basically we had a live event where there was an interactive live Q&A. The audience, in person and online, could then ask questions to the speakers around those presentations. The next week, the process was repeated, and we followed it up again with 8 new presentations and then a Q&A. And this is really interesting for hybrid, because it means that your audience have, I'm calling it, a continuum of touch points. So basically, they can start off online and they can end up at a real event if they wish, or they can continue on their journey of being solely digital. So hybrid gives us and gives attendees and gives event owners that flexibility and also the possibility for growth, both in numbers and in educating whatever it is that you're trying to reach your audience about. So there's a lot of value, I think, to be had around series and having series online. You know, a lot of these big tech summits happen once a year because they're very expensive to run. But what we have now is the possibility to maybe do a set of events every, say, 1 a quarter, and then finish off with a live event. And that way you build your audience, you build your numbers, and as they trust your content, perhaps they might buy a ticket if that's your eventual aim in terms of investment, or you could keep them on and as an online member. So loads of possibilities there around extending the content to not just be kind of a couple of days or a couple of hours. So I'll move on to cost. So this is an important one for everyone. And what I wanted to specifically hone in on is the challenge of the perceived cost versus the actual cost of a hybrid event. So as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the talk, one of the things that we found was that we had clients who were spending a lot of money on in-person events pre-pandemic, and then they spent basically half of that on a virtual event. And now they're at the point where they're going, well, do I want to spend 1.5 on a hybrid event? And they're kind of working out for themselves, oh, maybe I don't need the virtual. Maybe I'll just stick with the in-person. So we're having these conversations, and we're working out with the client what's right for them in terms of their audience. And one of the ways that we're looking at this is actually the cost of the attendee for the event owner. So for an in-person event, an attendee, the cost of an attendee would cover things like space, speaker flights and accommodation, food and drinks. Some events actually pay for attendees to attend, transportation, entertainment, and limits on numbers. Now, if you're running a virtual event, the cost of that attendee, the virtual attendee for the event owner, is essentially dividing the number of online attendees by the cost of the platform and the service. So it's an interesting comparison when you do it that way. And then the other part of looking at costs is to look at the cost for the attendee. So from an attendee point of view, you know, I'll have to get a hotel, I'll have to fly there, I'll have to take time off work, time off from family, friends, and lifestyle. So for either speakers or even attendees, even for example for this conference today, you know, who would have flown there and who is now able to attend, and the cost for the attendee is minimized. It's just measured in hours. So there's a huge cost benefit for the attendee, which needs to be taken into account, especially when you're trying to have a wider reach of your audience. So the way we've kind of knuckled down on a question to pose ourselves and our clients is, how much does an in-person attendee cost versus an online attendee? And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts or questions around your particular examples as well. So part of that then, part of the cost discussion is around budgeting. So you do need higher production costs for a hybrid event. You need to make sure that the AV is spot on. You need an additional MC for the virtual audience, and you need to increase staffing costs to essentially man the virtual platform. But the benefits to this are you get a wider reach, higher attendance, reduced travel costs overall, the potential for continued post-event engagement, and that idea of a series, again, is kind of strong around that area. Increased sponsorship value. You not only have the real estate of the physical venue, but you also have the real estate of the online content as well that you could sponsor and have booths that could be sponsored, that kind of thing. And then you've also got reliable data and metrics to measure all that. So one way that you can offset those perhaps extra costs, there's a couple of ways. There's direct and indirect. So a couple of examples of direct monetization could be registration for sales, if that was part of your business model, exhibitor sales, sponsorship. As we've said, you've basically got double the real estate now with a hybrid event, and possibly merchandise. And then indirect examples include brand awareness, of course, expanding reach, membership, and then retaining customers as well. So especially if you, again, I keep coming back to that idea of having a series as a great way to engage and keep customers going. So I'll move on now to content. So I'm going to talk about content for hybrid events. So specifically for virtual events, short and sharp is best, because people are there for the content, but if you can give them things to do along the way, then that will just make their experience the whole much more richer. And especially use the examples with a hybrid event where your in-person attendees are moving around or having their break. What can you do for the virtual attendees? They also will want a break as well, but they might be sitting around a bit. So maybe have a think about what kind of things might work for them. It could be extra content. It could be gamification. It could be a chance for networking. And what we'd highly recommend is that you invest in visual content, because the better it looks, whether it's in person or hybrid, the more engaging, the more experiential you can make it, the more memorable it's going to be. So some in-person activities, you also think about in-person activities that relate to digital content. So this is kind of a bit of a switcheroo. What I'm suggesting here is that you think about digital engagement ideas, but in the in-person environments. So things like videos, virtual reality, augmented reality, to create memorable experiences. And I'll be a bit biased here because that's what we do. And what I want to do is show you a couple of content ideas that we've been doing for in-person events and experiences at vStream. And then what I'd like to do is talk about how these could relate to the hybrid world. So I'll just play a video. It's a couple of minutes long, and we'll have a chat afterwards.
Hi, I'm Sal. Sal stands for Sentient Artificial Lifeform. As product launches and networking events return, vStream's experiential solutions can transform your marketing potential. Let me introduce you to another side of our business, where we have been creating interactive experiences around the world for over 15 years with vStream Health's parent company, vStream Digital Media. From Formula One to the Super Bowl, they help clients embrace digital transformation through brand storytelling, complex visualizations, and new technologies. vStream tell your stories where you need them most. Whether it's a QR code that triggers your digital content or high-performing wearable devices, vStream create vibrant, immersive experiences with bespoke content that's both intuitive and accessible. Their dedicated team of experts have created world-class virtual worlds that spring to life within the latest VR headset technology. They can even shrink you to the size of a nanobot to investigate the human body on a cellular level and explain complex procedures. vStream's designers and animators understand the need to create bespoke characters that build empathy for deeper engagement. They've given HCPs the unique ability to experience debilitating conditions from a patient-centric perspective. vStream are committed to developing innovative digital mental health techniques and supporting patients with practical AR solutions. They've created shareable content platforms so HCPs can communicate more directly during consultations. Then there's this. State-of-the-art devices that take you a step closer to the future, like their hologram technology. They've already created a hologram of the Novartis T-cell. vStream has created innovative download rooms for premium display experiences. The hype boxes showcase products with bespoke interactive information. vStream Health have already established a formidable partnership with Novartis. They've taken you behind the scenes to explore lab processes on the interactive virtual pathology tour, created a virtual gallery experience for BioView, and they even created me in 2D to celebrate the Novartis Year in Review. They can't wait to meet you and start helping you with your communications challenges.
For more information on vStream services.
So I hope that's given you a couple of ideas, and you're probably wondering, well, that's all happening in person. Or what we're here to talk about hybrid. So a few things to pull out of that for hybrid. So the first is, I don't know, you might have met there our lovely Sal. So Sal is essentially this lovely tour guide who takes event attendees on a tour around the platform before an event starts. So she was something that we created, and we've done this for other clients as well. Characters create empathy when you're faced with them, when they're telling you a story. And so having a character as part of your content or leading your content, whether that's online or in person, is a really good tool to create engagement and to create something memorable. A couple of the other things there, which I'll call out, was was VR experiences. So yeah, VR is a totally in-person experience, but what we're doing with one of our clients is we've got a 360 tour, which is actually available on desktop, on mobile, and then so it can be viewed, if you like, online there, but then it can also be taken into a congress or into a conference and viewed on a VR headset. So it's the same content, but you're viewing it in different ways and providing it in different formats for the different audiences, which is pretty cool to do that, and cost effective. And other things like videos. So videos, you can obviously create videos to go online or on a TV, but you can also create, I think you saw there, the video cards, which can be handed out to audiences. And it means the content will last longer in their hands, essentially. So there's just a few ideas there that we found, because we've obviously moved as well from, you know, doing lots of in-person stuff to virtual events. And there are a couple of the things that we found have worked well in a hybrid space. I'm running slightly over, so I know I'd like to get to a few questions. So then get to a couple more slides to go. This one here is around obviously when you've got all the content up and running, both whether it's in person or online, you have to measure it. So figure out which content is getting the most attention. You need to track attendee duration for the sessions. And importantly, figure out which content is not engaging your attendees, and then try and dig into why. For the online audience, what are they downloading? Measure speaker popularity so that you can build on that and work on that for following events. And you can do that, obviously, the online audience and the in-person audience can both do those kind of rating surveys. And through all that, try and discover content trends for future events. So all the measurement is important, because that will give us the data and the metrics, and that's essentially what gives you the value, or you can work out the value of your event for both your attendee and for the event owner. So a quick summary of a couple of the points that we've discussed here is the power of hybrid. So from a hybrid event, you can get increased reach and attendance. You can create rich engagement with digital content, reduce travel costs. It's a contingency. It's like insurance. If something goes kaput in the real world, you still have the online event that you can attract people to. Reduced environmental costs, longer exposure time. So that's the idea of having the series or a couple of events in a row. Increased sponsorship opportunities. And of course, out of all of that, getting the valuable data and metrics. So I'll finish up by stealing a quote from a HR guru who was talking about remote work, but I thought it worked pretty well for hybrid events, which is success in a hybrid environment requires us to move beyond viewing remote as a temporary strategy and to treat it as an opportunity. So with that, I'd love to see if you have any questions, and maybe we can talk about if you've got any examples or challenges even, or any hybrid event opportunities that you're happy to share with the crowd. We've got someone saying very cool, so that's great. Thank you, Christy. Okay, here's one. What do you recommend for increasing audience interaction during a hybrid event with members located across the globe? So that's an interesting one, because you're talking about kind of a maybe a follow the sun model. So you know, people might be not so much wanting to engage in something if it's the middle of the night for them, or if it's late in the evening. So I first of all, thinking about the time of your event, maybe it should be a longer duration, just to cover off people in different areas of the globe. And then audience interaction could be any of the things that we've talked about. You know, so be it networking, games, polls. The audience interaction has to match your content and has to match your audience. So it's not a one size fits all. But with your located across the globe comment, what I'd say is just bear in mind where those people might be and what time it might be for them. So thanks for that question. Great, and Louise says, great presentation, thank you. Thanks very much, Louise. Okay, I think we are just about coming to the end of the session now. Oh, so there's actually one more thing I have to do, which is introduce you guys to DJ Keeley's. So the CNX team have said that there is a DJ on after me, so I'm delighted to be the warm-up act for DJ Keeley's. So I hope you have a good time onwards, and nice to meet you all.